very good morning to you. I'm Bakhtiar Sanova and you are watching A News. Let's see the top stories. The United States sanctions Russia's two largest oil companies and calls on Moscow to agree to immediate ceasefire. European Union leaders gather in Brussels with support for Kiev and pressure on Russia topping the agenda. And the United States warns that Israel's preliminary vote to annex parts of the West Bank could jeopardize the Gaza ceasefire deal. We start in Washington, where President Donald Trump has announced new sweeping sanctions on Russia's oil industry, the harshest since he returned to the White House, signaling a tougher stance on Moscow amid the ongoing war in Ukraine. The move follows Trump's cancellation of a planned summit with Vladimir Putin in Budapest, citing a lack of progress on peace talks.
A rare moment of reversal from the White House and a clear message to the Kremlin. Donald Trump has scrapped his much-anticipated meeting with Vladimir Putin in Budapest, calling it not the right time. Hours later, he unleashed a new round of sanctions, the most severe of his presidency, aimed squarely at Russia's energy lifeline.
When we canceled the meeting with President Putin, it didn't feel right to me. It didn't feel like we were going to get to the place we have to get, so I canceled it. But we'll do it in the future.
Trump says the measures target Russia's two largest oil companies, Rosneft and Lukoil, a move designed to cut deep into Moscow's wartime revenue.
Look, these are tremendous sanctions. These are very big. Those are against their two big oil companies, and we hope that they won't be on for long. We hope that the war will be settled.
The new restrictions freeze assets and ban transactions with Rosneft and Lukoil, punishing not only Russian exporters, but also buyers in India and China.
Currently, putting these companies and their subsidiaries on SDN lists is prohibitive because, as the Treasury outline flags, there are possible consequences, secondary sanctions for the buyers of Russian oil. In this case, we're talking primarily about India and China.
But experts say the move, while serious, is unlikely on its own to change Putin's calculus unless it's followed by consistent enforcement and military pressure.
Even with shrinking oil revenues, which currently actually constitute about, like energy revenues total, constitute about 30% of Russia's budget income, so that's significant. Nonetheless, that alone is unlikely to radically alter Putin's calculus. What sanctions can achieve successfully is limiting the resources available in Putin's hands to continue this war.
The new sanctions bring Washington closer in line with Britain and the EU, while analysts say the real test lies in Asia, whether buyers like India and China comply or face US penalties. For the Kremlin, the move strikes at one of its last wartime lifelines, and experts say only sustained economic and military pressure can turn it from a tactical warning into a genuine push for peace.
The European Union has approved its 19th sanctions package against Russia, stepping up pressure over the war in Ukraine. Slovakia, the last holdout, lifted its objections after securing concessions on EU policies for fossil fuel-intensive cars. The measures aimed at hitting Russia's energy sector will be formally adopted Thursday morning, if no further objections arise. Washington has signaled follow-up sanctions, with Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent set to announce new measures later this week. Meanwhile, Swedish Prime Minister Ulf Kristersson and Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky signed a letter of intent to export of up to 150 of Saab's Gripen fighter jets to Ukraine after talks in Linköping, where the jets are produced. The two leaders also signed a long-term cooperation agreement on air defense. Ukrainian pilots have been in Sweden to test the Gripen, a fourth-generation single-engine fighter aircraft, widely seen as a solid low-cost alternative to the more expensive fifth-generation planes, such as the F-35.
Today's letter of intent, however, is something else than a donation. It does not aim for any new donations at this time. Instead, it is about long-term cooperation on air defense, and the possibilities for a very large defence industrial deal, probably somewhere between 100 and 150 Gripen-E models, which will start being manufactured now, in order to build a new strong Ukrainian air force.
Now, our teams must do their best to ensure that the next year marks the beginning of the practical realization of our agreements and the start of the use of Gripens.
European Union leaders are gathering in Brussels today for a crucial summit focused on Ukraine and rising tensions with Russia. With Moscow's attacks intensifying, leaders are expected to discuss new ways to boost military and financial support for Kiev and how to use Russia's frozen assets to fund it. The meeting also covers European defense, the Middle East and migration, but unity on Ukraine remains the top test for the bloc. Israel's parliament has taken its most controversial step in years, approving a preliminary bill to apply Israeli sovereignty to parts of the occupied West Bank, a move critics say could derail ongoing peace efforts in the region. U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio said that the Israeli Knesset's move towards the annexation of West Bank would threaten President Donald Trump's plan to end the conflict in Gaza.
We think it's important for the first 7 to 10 days over the next week that we had senior level administration officials on the ground working to make sure this was all coming together. This was a historic peace deal that President Trump delivered on, and now we have to make sure that it continues and that we continue to build upon it. Yeah, that's a vote in the Knesset, but obviously I think the President's made clear that that's not something we'd be supportive of right now, and we think there's potentially even threatening to the peace deal. So they're a democracy, they're going to have their votes, people are going to take these positions, but at this time it's something that we think it might be counterproductive.
The United Nations top court has issued a legal opinion stating that Israel, as an occupying power, must cooperate with the United Nations and its agencies to ensure humanitarian aid reaches Gaza. The International Court of Justice said Israel had not provided evidence that the UN Agency for Palestinian Refugees, or UNRWA, was biased or that its staff were linked to Hamas or other armed groups. Israel's ambassador to the UN called the ICJ's opinion shameful. The non-binding advisory was requested by the UN General Assembly in December, after Israel passed laws restricting UNRWA, severely limiting its ability to deliver aid in Gaza. Egypt and the European Union held their first summit in Brussels, signing a series of wide-ranging agreements aimed at deepening political, economic and security cooperation. One of the main outcomes of the talks was the signing of a memorandum of understanding between the EU and Egypt for a second €4 billion financing package. The funding provided as loans is intended to support Egypt's ongoing reform program. The leaders also emphasized the shared ambition to work together on global and regional issues and expressed a commitment to cooperate on facilitating the delivery of humanitarian aid into Gaza.
We are preparing to launch a Palestine donor group. It will bring together international partners to jointly promote reforms and support to the Palestinian Authority, so that the Palestinian Authority is modernized, strengthened and can deliver for the Palestinian people. Second, we are strengthening Egypt's economic stability. We are providing Egypt with €5 billion in macrofinancial assistance. It was signed today. And we continue our support to social and economic reforms. The third pillar is we are boosting together investment and trade.
Meanwhile, U.S. Vice President J.D. Vance met Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu in Jerusalem as Washington is moving forward with the next stage of its Gaza peace plan, focused on disarming Hamas and sending in an international security force.
As the Prime Minister said, these are days of destiny, and we're very excited to sit down and work together on the Gaza peace plan. We have a very, very tough task ahead of us, which is to disarm Hamas but rebuild Gaza to make life better for the people in Gaza, but also to ensure that Hamas is no longer a threat to our friends in Israel. That's not easy. I think the Prime Minister knows that as well as anybody, but it's something that we're committed to in the Trump administration. And I think we've, even in the past 24 hours, had a lot of good conversations with our friends in the Israeli government, but also, frankly, with our friends in the Arab world who are stepping up and volunteering to play a very positive.
U.S. military forces carried out an operation against a suspected drug smuggling vessel in the waters of South America. The strike marks the first known U.S. military action in the Pacific under the Trump administration's new anti-drug campaign. Similar operations in the Caribbean have already seen 7 strikes, raising tensions with Venezuela and Colombia. U.S. officials say several suspected smugglers were on board the vessel when it was hit in international waters. The U.S. maintains a strong military presence in the Caribbean, including missile destroyers, F-35 jets, a nuclear submarine, and about 6,500 troops. The U.S. Department of War confirmed that under President Donald Trump's orders, a vessel linked to a terrorist organization involved in drug trafficking was destroyed. 2 people on board, described as narco-terrorists, were killed. A supporter of Serbian President Aleksandar Vučić was shot and injured outside Parliament in the capital Belgrade on Wednesday. Vučić called the attack an act of terrorism, blaming it on his political opponents. The shooting happened in a tent set up by Vučić's supporters to counter anti-government protesters. Police say a 70-year-old man entered the area carrying a can of gasoline, allegedly intending to set the tent on fire. Video footage shows the moment the victim looked inside one of the tents before the suspect opened fire, hitting him and leaving him injured. The victim was rushed to a nearby hospital, where he received treatment. The Serbian leader urged supporters to refrain from retaliation. Former French President Nicolas Sarkozy has been the target of death threats in prison, the Paris prosecutor's office say. A video circulating on social media, apparently filmed by an inmate, shows him issuing threats following Sarkozy's arrival at the facility. 3 inmates were questioned as part of the investigation, and 2 mobile phones were seized during a search of the prison. The former president has been assigned 2 armed police officers for protection during his incarceration, a measure that has sparked complaints from prison guard unions. Over in France, the Louvre has reopened its doors after a daring jewel heist, welcoming back visitors. Tourists queued under the glass pyramid, some relieved to be inside, and others still surprised by what happened. The heist has been compared online comparisons to those of fictional thief Arsène Lupin. Meanwhile, the museum's director told the Senate committee that the Louvre's aging camera system failed to detect the thieves in time.
Tourists lined up to enter the iconic glass pyramid in Paris, welcoming the Louvre's awaited reopening just days after the daring robbery. They expressed a mix of relief and curiosity as the museum reopened. Some were simply glad to enter after days of closure.
Well, we came for a trip to France. We had a lot of expectations to see the Louvre Museum. Unfortunately, this happened, and that caused us to lose our tickets. And well, for all the tourists, I think it was a loss for everyone, and a shame too.
While others voiced surprise that such a high-profile theft could happen inside one of the world's most guarded museums.
Well, we wondered how it could be so simple to be able to steal in a museum that is, I think, quite guarded and in terms of security, quite strong. So we really wondered how it could be so simple, but we don't have the answer.
A few visitors joked that the real-life heist had made the Louvre feel like a scene from a movie.
Well, it's something surprising. It seemed that fiction became real, because we didn't think they were going to steal such precious jewels so easily.
The stolen jewels, valued at around 88 million euros, $102 million, included diadems, necklaces and earrings once owned by French royals, such as Empress Eugénie and Queen Marie-Amélie. In a heist lasting under 7 minutes, 4 masked thieves used a lift to reach the Galerie d'Apollon, smashed through a window and display cases, and escaped on scooters before police arrived. The theft has fascinated the public, drawing comparisons to the legendary gentleman thief Arsène Lupin, France's most famous fictional criminal, hero of classic novels and the hit TV series. Despite the audacity of the heist, the reopening allowed visitors to return to one of the world's most celebrated cultural landmarks, a key attraction for France's tourism industry.
Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan visited Muscat on Wednesday, the last stop of his three-day Gulf tour. He was welcomed by Sultan Haytham bin Tariq with an official ceremony at the Al Alam Palace. Erdogan and Sultan Haytham held a private meeting to discuss cooperation between Turkey and Oman. The Turkish leader then presented the Sultan with Turkey's homegrown electric car, the TOG. Later, Sultan Haytham hosted a dinner in honor of the Turkish president. India has upgraded its presence in Afghanistan, reopening its embassy in Kabul at full capacity. The decision marks a significant shift in New Delhi's approach toward the Taliban-led authorities. Our Tamim Bahi says more in Kabul.
India's Ministry of External Affairs announced today that its technical mission in Kabul has now been elevated to a full embassy, a move that takes effect immediately. The ministry says this underscores what it calls India's firm commitment to strengthening bilateral engagement with Afghanistan's de facto authorities. During the recent visit of Afghan Foreign Minister Amir Khan Muttaqi to New Delhi, both sides agreed to reopen the embassy in full. India's External Affairs Minister Subrahmanyam Jaishankar confirmed the decision, saying New Delhi aims to deepen cooperation, particularly in development projects, humanitarian support, and capacity building initiatives. Since the Taliban's return to power in 2021, India had maintained only a limited technical mission in Kabul, mainly to oversee aid and infrastructure projects. This upgrade now signals a notable policy shift. The move also comes at a delicate regional moment. For over a week, tensions are high between Afghanistan and Pakistan, with border clashes leaving several dead on both sides. A ceasefire was reached in Doha, mediated by Qatar and Turkey, but the situation remains fragile. Further talks are expected in Istanbul later this weekend. Pakistan, which remains highly sensitive about India's involvement in Afghanistan, is watching closely. Analysts say New Delhi's latest move could reshape and possibly complicate the regional balance of power. Tamim Bahis in Kabul, A News.
Uzbekistan is stepping up efforts to position itself as a regional digital hub through major infrastructure projects. A new partnership with Saudi Arabia's Data World aims to expand data capacity and connect the country to a high-speed Trans-Caspian network. Our Sevil Rajapova brings the details.
Uzbekistan is advancing digital cooperation with Saudi Arabia's Data World, launching a large-scale initiative to strengthen connectivity and data infrastructure. The plan includes the construction of data centers in New Tashkent and Bukhara, with a combined capacity of more than 210 megawatts, forming part of a wider effort to enhance the country's digital resilience. Data World began building its first 10-megawatt data center in Uzbekistan in May 2024 and intends to invest up to $5 billion in local projects by 2030. The new facilities will support cloud computing, artificial intelligence, and government digitalization programs. The initiative is also linked to a trilateral digital corridor between Uzbekistan, Kazakhstan, and Azerbaijan, connecting Central Asia with the South Caucasus and Europe. In August 2025, Kazakhstan and Azerbaijan announced the construction of a 380-kilometer fiber optic line under the Caspian Sea, running from Aktau to Sumgait, which will provide Uzbekistan with access to faster and more secure data route. Officials say the project will help turn Uzbekistan's landlocked position into land connectedness, making it a key bridge for digital trade between East and West, and supporting its strategy to become a regional digital hub. It is Sevil Rajapova reporting from Tashkent, Uzbekistan, A News.
International travelers are continuing their tour across Karabakh region of Azerbaijan, today visiting Shusha and Fuzuli to see the region's cultural revival and large-scale reconstruction firsthand. Our Gulshin Kojalieva has more.
After visiting Aghdam, Khankendi and Lachin on the first day, the international travelers are now continuing their two-day journey across Karabakh with stops in Shusha and Fuzuli. In Shusha, often called the cultural heart of Karabakh, the group is exploring restored landmarks and hearing about the city's revival as a hub of history and heritage. Later in Fizuli, attention turns to rapid reconstruction, from new housing and infrastructure projects to areas that were once heavily mined and are now being cleared for safe resettlement. Organized by the Extreme Travelers International Congress, the visit offers a first-hand look at how Karabakh is transforming, balancing remembrance of its past with the work of renewal taking shape on the ground. It's Gülçin Khojalieva with Natik Mammadov for A News.
The Mobile Museum of the Battles of Çanakkale has arrived in Baku, bringing with it a powerful glimpse into the 1915 Dardanelles campaign during the World War I. Designed to bring history to life, the museum travels across Turkey and beyond and will now be open for 3 days in the Azerbaijani capital. Among the items on display are personal belongings of soldiers, wartime equipment and the original Dardanelles defense plan. The museum stop in Baku reflects the deep historical and cultural bonds between Turkey and Azerbaijan. Since its launch, the Mobile Museum has visited dozens of cities across Turkey and several countries abroad, attracting hundreds of thousands of visitors eager to experience history in motion. The Champions League lit up Europe in the third week with rapid-fire goals and intense clashes as top clubs battled from kick-off to the final whistle. Let's take a look.
The third week of the Champions League lit up Europe with fire goals and competitive clashes across multiple stadiums. At San Mamés Stadium in Bilbao, Karabakh FK stunned Athletic Club with a lightning-fast opener from Leandro Andrade in the first minute. However, the Basque side didn't stay down for long. Gorka Guruzeta struck before half-time to level the score, then added a second in the second half. Robert Navarro capped off the comeback with a sensational strike, handing Athletic a 3-1 victory. Over in Istanbul, Galatasaray kept their unbeaten run alive, beating Bodo Glimt 3-1. Victor Osimhen was the star, scoring twice, while Yunus Akın also found the net. Bodo Glimt grabbed a late goal, but it wasn't enough to spoil the Turkish side's win. At Stamford Bridge, Chelsea cruised to a 5-1 win over 10-man Ajax to secure back-to-back wins in the Champions League. The Blues capitalised on a nightmare first half from the Dutch side, which saw Kenneth Taylor sent off in the 17th minute. Mark Gayu opened the scoring shortly after, and Chelsea never looked back, with 5 different players getting on the score sheet. Liverpool bounced back from their 4 successive defeats in style as they came from behind to beat Eintracht Frankfurt 5-1. Elsewhere, Bayern Munich dominated Club Brugge, while Real Madrid edged past Juventus. A night of high-stakes action and key wins that will shake up the Champions League groups as teams gear up for the next round.
That's your news update for this morning. From all of us in the studio, thank you for watching and stay tuned to A News.